aka Dr. George Bennett, PhD, is one of the world's leading researchers on the Pharaonic art and architecture of the Nile Valley.
Our mission is to revisit our legacy, a history of African people along the Nile Valley, a history of such grandeur, it staggers the imagination, the true source of all knowledge, be it art, architecture, astronomy, medicine, engineering, city planning, or government. My main focus as an African art historian, however, is on the art and architecture of the indigenous Africans along the Nile, beginning around 4100 BC. Although there are artifacts or tools that go as far back as the Paleolithic period, some 2.5 million years ago, our preoccupation will be with the Old, Middle, and New Kingdoms. Starting with the Old Kingdom some 6,000 years ago, we will experience the African genius that built the Great Pyramids, Sphinx, mortuary temples, and tombs. Why is this important? It is important because we must recognize our true nature as a people. To understand where we came from is to know where we are going.
I want to thank Minister Brown for giving me this opportunity to come here and talk about the research that I've been doing regarding the African art and architecture, Pharaonic art and architecture. In order to begin, I have to take you back at least 3.2 million years ago. And in doing so, we're going to start with the early Paleolithic period, which is the Old Stone Age. The Stone Age itself is broken up into three categories. You have three categories. One is the Old, one is the Middle, and last is the New Stone Age.
And what period of time would we be covering?
All right, we'll be covering from about 3.2 million years ago up until basically 1500s or 1600s BC. Because we'll be from the Old Stone Age, we'll come up and we'll see how stone has been shaped and developed all the way up until the time of the Great Pharaonic era, with the sculpture and the temples and other large monolithic things that were done in stone.
So we're going to start at.
We're going to start with. We're going to start about 8.2 million. I mean, we're going to start about 3.2 million years ago, and we're going to start with the little pebbles and how we shape those, and how we start to shape larger stones, and how we had actually developed a culture that was inherent to the deeds of us as a people, which of course affected everybody else. That includes Europe and Asia. I just want to throw out a few little facts and talk about a couple of little things, because, you know, these are the things that they've neglected to teach us in school, because they were always concerned about not giving the history that's due to the Africans, but instead claiming most of the history for themselves. So we want to straighten out a lot of that misnomer and get a lot of those fuzzy cobwebs out of the way. While we were being taught, we were taught about various types of Stone Age man, coming from the Ottoman, the Acheulean, the Mousterian, the Neanderthal, the Aterian, the Cro-Magnon man. And basically, this is just an evolution of one man. It's the evolution of the African man. And it's the evolution of the African mind that produced the tools that we're going to be looking at. So, in effect, when I talk about the Ottoman, the Acheulean, the Mousterian, the Neanderthal, the Cro-Magnon, it's all really one man. It was just broken up and categorized by the Western academic community, scientific community, to do research, but at the same time not give the information out as being something that is continual. And that's specifically what I'm talking about. So
now, I want you to repeat that again. You're saying all of those periods basically are one man? You're referring to one people?
Yeah, so when we go back to the old Stone Age, 3.2 million years ago, we're talking about a tool-making culture in East Africa, specifically in Ethiopia I'm talking about now, the Odawan, which is the oldest tool industry in the world. And that goes back 3.2 million years ago, known as the Odawan. You also have the Acheulean, which is really a French word. It comes from Achul, a place in southern France. The anthropologists and archaeologists, they give this name Achul during the Middle Stone Age period, going from 1.9 million years before the present. Then you have the Mousterian, Aterian, you have Cro-Magnon and Neanderthal. That's 300,000 to 30,000 years before the present. And you know, from 30,000 to 10,000 years before the present was really the thawing out process that took place in Europe, where the Neanderthal and the Cro-Magnon man started to come out of the glacier period, because this was the warming up period around about 10,000 years ago in Europe.
Now, how did the Europeans at that time, 10,000, 30,000 years ago, get into Europe? I mean, everybody was in Africa, so you're saying that the African migrated around the world?
Yes, most definitely. And the environment played a big role in to determine how he would appear. In other words, while we had a culture based on agriculture that gave us pretty much everything we needed, in a benign climate, nice climate, beautiful climate, vegetation, the opposite of that would be ice and snow. I mean, ice 3 miles high in certain places. So therefore, the development of the Neanderthal or the Cro-Magnon man, the lighter skin, became lighter because you only had 3 hours of sunlight a day. So the skin had to lighten up to receive the sunlight. The eyes turned a different color because it had to adjust its vision in the dark. Most of the time they spent in the caves. The hair on the body became longer because of the weather, the condition of the weather being so cold that they needed the extra hair on the body. And now this went all the way from Europe all the way across Asia.
51st parallel.
At the 51st parallel, right. That's where the ice had come down. So anything below the 51st parallel, like France and Spain, it's pretty evident. We can see his development there, because there are certain caves, like the caves of Altamira in Spain, and then also you had the caves of Lascaux in France, where you actually see the remains of the Grimaldi, who were definitely Africans because they had the longer head. The head didn't become much rounder until later on, as he began to progress further north. And so we have evidence of that already, and it's already been proven, so we don't have to, say, look for proof of that. Yes, the African man had spread out, not just on the continent, but also into Europe and Asia. But as I was pointing out before, while we were in school, we would be hit in junior high school, and it depends. If you went to college and you studied in any of these fields, like archaeology or anthropology, zoology, geology, you would get hit in studying a course on the evolution of man. And we get all of these different categories of man, starting with the oldest. The oldest is Australopithecus, which is a hominid fossil documented to be about 8 to 4 million years ago. Hominin. You had Australopithecine, which split into two, gracile and robust. That was about 1.9 million years ago. Then you had Homo habilis, the handyman. They call him the handyman, nickname handyman.
Why?
Because he had a larger brain, and the manipulation of the stone tools in terms of making tools that would benefit his everyday survival, such as stone hammers, side scrapers, points. We're going to get into all of that, and we'll see it when it comes up on the screen. You had Homo erectus, 1.9 million years ago.
Now, at this point, everybody's still in Africa.
Everybody's still in Africa, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Homo sapiens, 400,000 to 130,000 years ago. Homo sapiens sapiens. This is another category that they built on top of Homo sapiens. This is 180,000 to 150,000 years ago.
Now, he's still in Africa.
We're still in Africa.
And have not went into Europe.
Well, Neanderthals, the Neanderthal, which is 230,000 to 29,000. 230,000 to 29,000 was during the Middle Paleolithic Period. Now, this is where you start to find the slow migration coming out. And during the Middle, they inhabited Europe and Asia around this time. So you have Cro-Magnon, which appears at the end of the Ice Age, along with Neanderthal and Homo sapiens sapiens. Also found were Neanderthal and Cro-Magnon sites found side by side at various sites in Europe and Asia. So I ran through that list because to remind us and give us some more background in terms of where this lecture is going. Now, just from my little note section here before we get into the slides, which is very, very important in terms of illustrating what I'm talking about. From my notes, I specifically wanted to point this out, that the Nile River is 4,160 miles long. Coming from Khartoum, where the Blue and White Nile meet. The White Nile is out of Uganda, the Blue Nile is out of Ethiopia. They both meet at Khartoum, and they travel north to the Mediterranean Sea. That is the valley. That is the valley that we're going to focus on, because this is the place where the spawning of culture and civilization throughout the world took place. So we have to go back to the earliest point we can get to, and then see the evolution of the African art and architecture that engulfed the Pharaonic age, or became the Pharaonic age of art and architecture. Like I said before, 4,160 miles long, 4 to 5 miles wide. This is current, this is today. Now, I want to talk about the pluvial period, which is the rainy period that took place before these, during the time of these glacier period, where you had the Sahara Desert totally dry today. That didn't happen until 10,000 years ago. 10,000 years ago, between 10,000 and 30,000 years ago, you had vegetation. Vegetation with jungles, savannas, you had lakes, rivers, you had, and this is all in the Sahara Desert. You had fishing that was taking place, you had large animals, you had buffalo, giraffes, lions, tigers, crocodiles, large elephants, and also small animals, all due to a geological change, a major change. And that means a lot of our civilization is still under the sand. So we're gonna look at the conditions that took place that fostered this kind of culture and civilization, which I'm so proud to bring forward, because this is something that very rarely, even in the college Black Studies program, we really get a chance to examine how the development of the art and the architecture came out of the Nile Valley. And that's what I'm trying to do, and that's what I'm going to do right here today with this lecture. I'm going to bring it to everybody. So I guess that wraps it up with my notes, and now at this juncture, we're ready to go on to the slides. Okay, now we're ready for the slides. African origins of Pharaonic art and architecture. And by the way, that's by me, Heru, Bennu, Ra. I have a background in art. I studied at the School of Visual Arts. I also studied at the Yale School of Art and Architecture. And also, with the trips that I have been taking to Kemet, I've been studying there as well, doing the research in terms of documentary evidence. So, we're going to go on. The ancient megalith, discovered in Darfur, April 2007, actually it's a reservoir which is several hundred meters underneath the surface of the Sahara in a large region shared between Libya, Egypt, Chad, and Sudan. And it contains roughly 150,000 cubic kilometers of water, 93,000 square miles. The water is held there by a porous Nubian sandstone. So what we're talking about is a lake underneath the surface of the desert. Where in some places people can still get the water, these different oases. Now this is a close-up image. This image model using satellite radar data shows the hills that surround the ancient lake and a few ancient rivers. Those are the dotted lines that we see here. This is from the Boston University Center for Remote Sensing. So we know that living in these valleys where there were lakes and river beds, that people survived. They were able to fish. They were able to hunt game and use the resources by the river and the river valleys to build their housing and so forth, and to conduct the agriculture and herding and what have you. Now this was all during a time when this was all vegetation, as I pointed out before in the introduction. So we can move along here and remember that as these river valleys started to dry up, people got closer and closer to the river, so that all of the artifacts, the early ancient artifacts, are still in these dry riverbeds and wadis and under the sand, frankly. Now, I'm going to start out with the simplest tools that were at hand. This is the BrotherRonn bone tools. This takes you back about 2.5 million years ago. And some of these bones were used for different purposes. Some were used for actually planting seeds. Some were used as sickles. And some were used as just a hammering tool. That's BrotherRonn. The bone tools have been documented from the advent of Homo sapiens and are also known from Homo Neanderthal contexts. Bone is a ubiquitous material in hunter-gatherer societies, even when other tools and materials were scarce or unavailable. Any portion of animal or fish skeleton could potentially be utilized. However, antlers and long bones provide some of the best working material. Long bone fragments can be shaped by scraping against an abrasive stone into such items as arrows and spear points, needles, awls, and fish hooks. So you have you have an example of some of the bone tools that we use here. Here you can see one that's down here, 9053, with a hole in it. And I guess that would be used for sewing leather materials and, or even rope in basket weaving using reeds. And here you have, this is a typical awl right here. Now, these are bone tools. I remember when I was at art school and we worked in the ceramic shops. And it reminded me right away when I saw these bone pieces, they appeared to be appropriate for working in clay, because once you have clay and you can work with it, you want to design it, you have to have different points and different shapes.
Now, what period are we talking about here in terms of years?
Well, we're talking really close to 2 million years ago. All right, because the other one is for the bone tools, that I presented, started about 2.5 million years ago. So that's been a long time. The bone is a softer material to work with, but it is also a tool that could be the precursor to working in harder materials aside from clay and then going into stone. These are some bone artifacts that could be seen today in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, specifically in the Egyptian collection section of the museum on the first floor. You got a collection of bone artifacts. These most of them are combs. Excuse me, let me get back to that. These are combs with animal figures on top of them, and some of these figures actually seem to be figures that you would use for ceremonial purposes, and they're mostly figures of I wouldn't put it past the idea that these figures could actually represent different deities.
Brother Heru,
yeah.
I find it hard to believe that 2 million years ago, human beings were carving these kind of combs with that kind of precision in art. This is 2 million years ago?
We're talking 2 million years ago. It all started with a simple flake, 3.2 million years ago. This is an example from Ojibwe Gorge, from Ojibwe Gorge, Tanzania, made by Homo habilis 3.2 million years ago. The handyman. This is from the University of California, Berkeley, Department of Anthropology, from its collection. And we're going to take a look at this Ojibwe flake tool that's 3 to 2 million years ago. Now, it was found in the Ojibwe Gorge in Tanzania, like I pointed out before. And we're looking actually at one piece with 3 sides. Now, this piece is more or less what they call a side scraper. It's not an arrowhead. It's a side scraper. And they use side scraper to take the fat away from the skin of animals. It was used for that particular purpose. And we're going to see some more of that. Now, you got the BrotherRonn chopper cores from the Ojibwe Gorge, Tanzania, Africa. And, the chopper cores, I can go on and read this, but they're basically a large percentage of them are thought to have been made by Homo habilis nearly 3.2 million years ago. They also represent the simplest of stone tool technologies. Some may have been used for food processing, operations that involve pounding, breaking, or bashing. And you can see as a precursor that the smaller tools that you find on the right-hand side here would eventually evolve into arrows and spearheads and what have you. So we're talking about the oldest now, going back 3.2 million years ago. Now, here's an Ottawan / Acheulean tool assemblage. Now, the Acheulean, as I pointed out before, was a name that was given to a process and an evolution that took place, that came out of the Ottawan, which is the African foundation for these tools being made. The Acheulean name was given to it by a French archaeologist who named it after a southern town in France called Achou. So that could have been confusing while I was at school because I had no idea. I thought maybe the tools that had actually came from that part of southern France and had not evolved and was brought there. So when we look at this, the different tools here, we have different types of tools here, and they're all made out of stone. You even have the stone with the that's used as a point, and either some type of rope, or reed rope or grass rope, used for a particular purpose. And you have pointers here. You have like a chisel type here. Of course, the arrowheads. The larger one could be more of a spear type head. Also, you have these side scrapers. And you have these stone pieces that were probably used for grinding or smashing seeds and what have you, almost like you would have in a druggist would use to put his herbs in and then bang it so that he can bring it into a powder. Now this is a denticulate tool. Denticulate tool is the scientific name that they give to this particular stone piece here, this stone tool. And it's almost like a stone sword. And indeed, these tools might have been used as saws, more likely for meat processing and for wood. Denticulate. All right, now we have the Ishango bone here. This is a bone that was made from the fibula of a baboon. It's dated to the Upper Paleolithic era, about 18,000 to 20,000 years BC. It's a dark brown length of bone, the fibula of a baboon, with a sharp piece of quartz affixed to the top. It's affixed to one end, perhaps for engraving or writing. It was first thought to be a tally stick, as it has a series of tally marks carved in 3 columns running the length of the tool. But some scientists have suggested that the grouping of notches indicate a mathematical understanding that goes beyond counting, and in some cases it was used by the opinion of other anthropologists that it could have been used as a calendar to mark the phases of the moon. So it has a little piece of quartz at the top here. That's another stone that was indigenous to southern Africa, and they say it's a possibility that it was used for engraving. So I brought this stone piece out here. I mean this bone piece out here to show that you can do engraving if you have the proper tool. Now this is the Aterian industry. This is 82,000 years before the present. The Aterian industry is a name given by archaeologists to a type of stone tool manufacturing dating to the Middle Stone Age or Middle Paleolithic in the region around the Atlas Mountains, which is the northern part of Africa, Algeria, and around that area, and the northern Sahara. When we take a closer look at the Aterian arrowhead close up, and we're getting again 3 views of one arrowhead. We're getting both sides, plus we're getting the side angle, showing how the back and the front, as well as the side of the arrow, and how through the napping process, what they call napping, which means the breaking off of and shaping the stone piece to bring it to where you want it, so that it can be tanged. And when I say tanged, I mean this part down at the bottom here, so that it would easily fit onto a handle or an arrow, to be an arrowhead. Now, bifacially, they will work leaf-shaped and tanged projectile points, common artifact type, and so are recross and levallois flakes. Items of personal adornment pierced in orchid, Mousterian shell beads are known from at least one Aterian site with an age of 82,000 years. Now this is BrotherRonn, Achulian bifacial point 1.5 million years ago. So this is a larger spearhead type. And when we look at this Achulian hand axe from Kent, there's no real difference. Kent is an England. The types shown are clockwise from top, cordate, ficron, and ovate. So you have the cordate, the largest one that's at the top. This could be used as a mace or a hammerhead. Side scraper down at the bottom, the ficron, and you have the ovate, which is actually the arrowhead. But these are all indigenous to Africa. Now, here's a cordate found in an Achulian hand axe found at Omar Kabish in Ethiopia, showing you that there is no difference, although we might want to categorically say, well, okay, this particular tool belongs here or is indigenous to this particular place as opposed to Africa. So I just want to clear up some of the misconceptions about our understanding of the development of man going through these different phases. All right, you have Mousterian, which is the name given by archaeologists to a predominantly flint tool industry associated primarily with Neanderthal and dating to the Middle Paleolithic, the middle part of the Old Stone Age between 300,000 years before the present and 30,000 years before the present. It was named after the type site of Le Mousterian, French, in southern France. Similar flint work has been found all over unglaciated Europe, the Near East, and North Africa. And I think we covered some of that in the introduction, so this is no surprise at this point. But it's still the evolution of the African man as he traveled out into the various parts of the world. He took his toolkit with him. These are other examples of Mousterian. We have the larger hammer stones here, and you have tools here for hunting, and then you have the smaller, tinier tools that could be used for engraving. And here is an example of the napping process to break off one piece, and then you can actually see the other piece laying to the side here, which would eventually be, they would go through the napping process where they would actually flake off the edges and make it into a proper tool. All right, now this is strictly right out of Kemet, Nile Valley. We're looking at here the Giza palette, Hathor, a cow-headed palette, and it's in the Cairo Museum. And it came out of the Giza tomb 59. Now, when you first look at this palette was carved out, and when you first look at it, it seems to be a figure of a person with a star as a head, two arms raised above their head, with two stars in their hands. And at first glance, that's what it appears to be, especially if you're talking about the cow head of Hathor. When in fact, what you're looking at is the horns. You're looking at the horns of Hathor, and you're looking at the broad side of the face with the eyes here. And a good example of that would be when I found this coin. This coin is a Greek coin. It has the two stars over the horns of the cow. So we were very abstract in the way that we had interpreted art. And they haven't changed a bit of that even today when you go to the Museum of Modern Art and various other places. This is pretty interesting. We got different size stone weights right here that we use. The merchants used it in their trade. They would use it on the scales. In a good year, the quantity of grain harvested in Egypt far exceeded the needs of the country. The grain exported to neighboring countries provided a rich source of revenue for the Egyptians. Treasury. Egypt's economy functioned on a barter system in the marketplace. Stone weights were used to determine the value of grain and other rations. Okay, now this is very important because this is one of the most astounding things that I've found in my research. Now here we have a hammerstone and pounding it to dust, building in stone, monument of the obelisk. The masons used stone tools such as hammerstones, which were particularly superseded by copper and later bronze saws, drills, and chisels. Builders seem to have shaped it with the help of diabase, or what they call dolerite hammerstone, pounding it to dust. Large numbers of these rounded hammerstones with diameters of about 15 centimeters and their remains have been found in abandoned quarries. And it's an interesting thing because when you go to Aswan and you look at the broken obelisk in Aswan, you can find these same stones laying around, these dolerite stones laying around. And they were in fact used to break up the hard granite that lied in the quarries. Go to this next one here. Now, the broken obelisk at Aswan. We have the hammerstone, and we look at the shape of it, and then you see how it's applied in the quarry. They actually break away pieces of the stone all at once. You might have 600 men on one side, 600 men on the other side, using this stone to cut down into the surface of the quarry. Last year, it puzzled me. I asked myself the question, how do they get it out from the bottom? Okay, I can understand working on the top, working on the sides. How do you get it out from the bottom? Then about 2 years ago, I found that there's a hole, that they would actually dig a hole to go underneath. They would actually dig a hole to go underneath. There would be, I guess, several, one at this point, one here, and maybe about 40 different holes underneath. They would actually go underneath the stone, and they would start to work underneath the stone, widening the hole, making it possible so that you can lift this 1,162 tons of an obelisk out of the quarry. But that was always a mystery to me, how they were able to do it. So this is one of the ways they open it up and they would make it wider. I wanted to show the marks that were made by the hammerstone here. The marks that were made, and you could see the grooves, and you could actually see where the stones were used to actually open up and cut into into the quarry to remove the obelisk. We got the obelisk of Thutmose III. I was kind of surprised to find out that this obelisk took maybe about 6 or 7 months to complete. That means getting it out of the ground, smoothing the sides, cutting into the stone, and finishing the stone, having it polished. And in some cases, with in most cases, they would have a sort of gold platinum pyramid on the top. I think they call it the electron or something. All right, now we got the Sphinx. There's big controversy with that. The Sphinx is more than 10,500 years old, according to John West.
What does he base that age, 10,000 years?
Well, he based it on basically the weatherization of the Sphinx itself. In other words, his concept was that this is weather. It was affected, weather erosion. It was affected by the rain, lots of rain. And there was no rain in the Sahara between, from 10,000 up to the present. But from 10,000 to 30,000 years ago, there was rain. There was a lot of vegetation. This Sphinx was sitting almost in the jungle. When you go there today, it's pretty much sand. You can see for miles and miles and miles. So he was able to get a geologist from Boston University to come down and check it out. A gentleman by the name of Robert Schoch, geologist, who actually backed him up and said that this is the pattern is so similar in terms of rain being an erosive factor here, that he understood from his studies that this definitely was a corrosion. Excuse me. That took place between 10,000 and 30,000 years ago. So now, how does that connect with the pyramid of Khafra? Because it's supposed to be connected to the pyramid of Khafra. We don't know. There's a lot of questions. That's why I got question marks up there. The possibility of the pyramids being built later than thought at this particular time. They say the Giza Plateau about 2,500 years ago, 2,500 BC, was the time where the Great Pyramids were being built during the 3rd and 4th dynasties. So we don't even know if that's correct. I'm going to go on. Here we have some examples of clay pottery. The art is being developed in vessels. Here is a particular here's a particular piece that's kind of interesting, because here you see the person is buried in a clay pot. It's big enough to hold a person. Now, when I left Canada this summer, I was able to see for the first time how they did some early burials. And one of the ways they did it was they would put people in a reed basket. And this was all before the great sarcophagus and other burial practices. So, looking at this, we can see that we have some examples of female deities, and we're going to see more of that. We're going to vases. Here you have clay artifacts. Some of the clay artifacts is pretty interesting once you start to follow it. Like this particular figure here. You can see this figure basically in the Metropolitan Museum of Art and also in the Brooklyn Museum. This is the Hathor.
Brother Ben.
Yes, sir.
It's good to have you in the studio today. Would you please give us a little bit of your background, introduce yourself to us?
Okay. My name is Heru, Bennu, and my specific area of study and research is in the art and architecture of Pharaonic art. Now, my background basically is art. I studied at the School of Visual Arts, Fine Arts. I also went to the School of Art at Yale University, the School of Art and Architecture at Yale. I taught at Pratt Institute and also my alma mater, which is the School of Visual Arts. So actually I taught at a couple of private schools, universities, and with the New York City Board of Education for the past 10 years. Now I'm retired and I have more time to do research on a very serious subject, which I don't think anybody has done any trailblazing in this area, but I want to specifically focus on the art and architecture of the Africans who developed the Nile Valley civilization, which affected all of the world. So what I'm going to attempt to do is start you from the very beginning, and in doing so, I want to point out that many of us have been miseducated. Miseducated in the sense that whenever we studied anything that had to do with archaeology, anthropology, in school, for some reason or another, it didn't relate to who we were. And I just want to set the record straight that when we start to talk about things like the Stone Age or the Paleolithic Period, basically we're talking about three major periods of the Stone Age. We're talking about the Old Stone Age, the Middle Stone Age, and New Stone Age. Stone Age. Paleolithic is a word that simply means stone age. Paleo would be stone, and lithic would be age. In the Old Stone Age, going back about 3.2 million years ago, you had what was known as a tool-making industry called the BrotherRonn. This is out of Ethiopia. Also, in the Middle Stone Age, you had the Aterian Stone Age, which was about 1.9 million years before the present. And then you have the New Stone Age, which covered the Mousterian, Aterian, Neanderthal, and Cro-Magnon. That's 300,000 to 30,000 years before the present. Now, this might seem like a lot of information in terms of numbers and so forth and so on, but trust me, it's relevant. The Stone Age period breakdown, and I'm going to give a definition of the Stone Age by referring to the fact that anthropologists look at and geologists, they look at the Stone Age as being broken up into three parts within three parts. In other words, you have the Old Stone Age that has an early period, middle, and late. The same is true with the Middle Stone Age. You have an early, middle, and late. Same thing with the New Stone Age, early, middle, and late. So they break everything down into these different little categories and whatnot, when in fact it could be a projection from a certain time, going back at least 84 million years, up to the New Stone Age. So they give us categories. Australopithecine, the tool makers. Now this is all coming out of Africa, and especially around the Great Lakes areas. Australopithecus was documented to be 84 million years before the present. You had Australopithecine, it splits into two, one gracile and the other robust, around about 1.9 million years ago. Then you have Homo habilis. He had a larger brain capacity, 3.2 million years ago to 1.8 million years ago. Homo erectus, 1.9 million to 200,000 years before the present. Homo sapiens, 400,000 to 130,000. Homo sapiens sapiens, 180,000 to 150,000. Then you had your Neanderthals, 230,000 to 29,000. During the Middle Paleolithic, they inhabited Europe and parts of Asia.
What period was that in terms of years?
That's between 230,000 and 29,000 years before the present. And last but not least, you have the Cro-Magnon. It appears at the end of the Ice Age, 35,000 to 10,000 BC. Found in rock shelter sites along with early Homo sapiens sapiens. Also found were Neanderthal and Cro-Magnon sites found side by side at various sites. So basically what we're talking about here is we have a breakdown basically of the various types of Australopithecus or Australopithecine. And I want to point out that the Neanderthals and Cro-Magnon was supposed to be the last or the end of the spectrum in terms of the European perception of man being evolved. Okay, so but there's a misnomer in there too, because Neanderthal and Cro-Magnon really refers to those who were trapped behind the ice about 10,000 years ago, or between 10 and 30,000 years ago. They were actually trapped behind the ice, and they were known as the Neanderthals, which were also immigrants in other parts of Asia, not just in Europe. So I went through all of this to tell you this, that a lot of it is very scientific, and if you're studying it, great. But at the same time, let's have a common knowledge about this. All of this categorically represents a scientific point of view. And what I'm suggesting to you is that man, going back at least 8 to 4 million years ago, already had a DNA code in terms of how he was going to go about surviving, making tools. And we're focusing specifically on the tools that were made from stones and how that one pebble evolved into a solid piece of stone that was cut, weighing anywhere from 3 to 4 tons as a stone that you could put into the pyramid. So that's a big, big leap, and we just want to get the groundwork straightened out first in terms of how we perceive the art and architecture that evolved out of the African consciousness. And lastly, I just want to refer to my notes right here. I just want to give you a sense of our beginning in terms of what we're going to talk about. The Nile River is 4,160 miles long. It starts at Khartoum, and then it goes all the way up to the Mediterranean. It's 4,160 miles long, and it's 4 to 5 miles wide, depending on where you are. There's a geological change. We're talking about geological changes that take place because of course, as you know, we had 4 major periods in the Ice Age. And those 4 major periods had intercessions, or what we call interglacial periods, where there was a warming up of the climate, and then it would freeze back over again. And we're going back to the Pliocene, which is about 6 to 7 million years ago. Mm-hmm. So we've been having these environmental changes which took place in Africa and Europe. So the geological change that I want to focus on is during the pluvial period, which is a rainy period, which means that all the desert lands, not just in Africa, but also in Asia, was full of vegetation, teeming with vegetation, which meant that people could live. There were areas in the Sahara that we look at now as being very, very dry, but was at the time very wet, and the areas in the Sahara was full of vegetation, jungles, savanna, grasslands, lakes, springs, and river valleys, with large animals such as rhinoceros, buffalo, giraffe, lions, tigers, crocodiles, elephants, gazelle, and many common small animals, all due to a geological change known as the pluvial period. The Nile River during the pluvial phase would be as much as 100 miles across. This is extraordinary. 100 miles across. Now, ordinarily today, if you went on the Nile, it would be no more than 4 to 5 miles wide at the most. But during this particular period, the pluvial period, in heavy rain, the Nile River itself became 100 miles wide. And with the monsoon being generated from the west. And that's pretty much the information I wanted to set this lecture up with. So we have an idea of the geological changes as it relates to the Stone Age or Paleolithic period.